well. This really is my favourite time of the year. Bluebells on the ground, the birds are nesting, the buds are opening. It can only be 1 month, and that's May. And May can be a pretty good month for pike fishing, you know. In the past, it's normally meant a trip to Ireland or across to Denmark. But recently, the close season restrictions were altered. And now it's possible to fish on still waters like this one during the spring months. And that's exactly what I'm going to do today. Now, I've been very, very lucky to get an invitation to fish this lake. And I've just taken a walk around, and it's really whetted my appetite for the day. I was just getting the boat ready, I moved the boat away, and there was a big pike lying underneath the boat. Now, I tried to catch it and I didn't catch it, but it's really got me excited to get out there and try and catch some more pike. Now, this particular lake is completely surrounded with fallen trees, there's reeds, there's lily pads, and bank fishing is going to be very difficult. And you're going to find that situation on lots of lakes. And it's important, if you're going to make the best of your pike fishing, to understand boat fishing tactics. You're going to need a boat to get out there and track the pike down and catch them. And that's what we're going to look at now. So what I'm going to do next is just show you the basic equipment that we need for boat fishing. Well, this is the boat I've been provided with for the day. It's not usually used as a fishing boat, so I'm going to check it over very thoroughly, and it's important to do this. It's absolute stupidity just to jump into a strange boat and just go out in it. Now, I've checked the hull, there's no cracks in it, it's pretty sound. It's got buoyancy chambers, which makes it fairly unsinkable. The row locks are in good condition, but it hasn't got proper anchors. So what I've done, I've brought my own anchors with me. I'm going to fit my own anchors to the boat. I've fitted my little electric motor and battery. That should propel us quietly around the lake. And I'm going to put some oars in just in case the battery should fail. And most essential is to put a piece of carpet on the bottom of the boat, because the bottom of the boat is pretty hard, and obviously this is a safety thing for the pike. The pike will go onto a soft surface if we get one into the boat. So now it's just a matter of loading up the tackle. Well, these are the anchors I shall be using. They're pretty heavy. This one weighs about 28 pounds. It's as much as we'll need on a small lake like this. This is a different type of anchor. If we should get into a really bad wind, which I doubt whether we will today, it's actually got claws on it that open up. These claws open up like so and grip into the mud and stop us from drifting. These are the oars I shall be using. And this is the echo sounder, which I always take with me when I'm boat fishing. Pretty simple to install, really. The transducer is just mounted on this piece of wood, and I'll just use a simple woodworking clamp just to clamp it to the side of the boat. Now, as regards tackle, there's no point getting into the boat with a pile of tackle. You need to plan ahead, because boats can get very cluttered and it can get quite a mess in there, even just with one angler when you're on your own. And so I've planned out roughly what I want to do. And basically I want to explore the water using surface lures. That really is probably the most exciting way to catch pike. So I've got a rod all set up here, ready for lure fishing. A bit later on, I shall probably be doing a little bit of dead baiting. If the fish aren't coming up on the surface, I'll be dead baiting. And I've got another rod here, which is all ready for sink and draw tactics. So that gives us quite a few options. So let's get out in the boat and see what we can do. Well, everything's loaded up. The electric motor's installed, the echo sounder is turned on. Got my landing net ready, forceps ready, all the rods are ready for use, and all the lures and baits I'm likely to need are all ready for action. So now I'm going to make slow progress up the lake and look for likely holding spots for pike. It's not a very good time to start pike fishing. I mean, the sun's well up. The pike have probably fed earlier on this morning. But of course, not everyone has the luxury of starting at daybreak. We've all got our little chores to do. Now, what I'm really looking for is the sort of place where a pike would be lying after it's had its feed. Perhaps under these fallen branches, in amongst all these lily pads. They're all the sort of place a pike might just lie up for a while when it's not feeding. But just because it's finished its main feed, it doesn't mean to say that you can't tempt it. Now, I've got to cut the motor. We've suddenly gone through a very shallow area here. I don't want to wreck the motor on these pads. God, this really is a maze of sunken branches. There's sunken branches all under the water here. There must be pike lying around here somewhere. In fact, I'm tempted to drop the anchor and just give it a try. And I'm going to start off lure fishing, surface lure fishing. Now, when I'm surface lure fishing, my hand goes straight into the tackle box and goes straight for my favourite surface lure, the jointed jitterbug. I always feel if I can't catch on the jointed jitterbug, I won't catch on anything. This one's a little bit bent up. It's caught so many pike. I've just got to get the lip back into shape. I don't know what it is about it, whether it's the action or the sound it makes, but as soon as the pike see it, they know it's worth going for. It's not necessary with a floating plug to start winding straight away. One thing I love to do is just wait for a few seconds, just let the ripples move away, just for the pike to pick up the fact that something has just made a disturbance on the water. And just start it off in a slow, easy motion. I think a mistake a lot of people make is to work the lures too violently. I'm sure in nature pike just don't see things darting around at 50 miles an hour. If that was a frog, for example, trying to get across the lake, the last thing it wants to do is let the predator see it. So it would probably move very, very slowly. Nothing that time. Let's try out towards that island. Again, let it settle. I mean, I'm sure the pike don't stop and think, oh, that's a frog or a fish. They just know if it's moving, it's likely to be edible. I mean, that could have been a bird falling out of a tree or anything, really. And the pike's an inquisitive fish. It'll have a look at anything that moves. Now, you may think, I've gone crazy, I'm standing here like a tailor's dummy, I'm not moving a muscle, but I've just looked down, and I don't believe this, there's a pike next to the boat. And if I move my hand or my head, it's going to move away. And I'm just going to slowly turn around and very gently manoeuvre the jitterbug over the fish. I'm just going to tease him first of all. Oh, he's interested. I've let it sit on the water. I'm moving it away from him now. He's coming up after it. Oh! Wash! God, did you see that? Now, whether that spooked him, I don't know, but he may come back. Well, that's what surface lure fishing's all about. Now, the water's disturbed now, I can't really see much. I'm just looking around to see where he's ended up in the water. He can't be too far away. Oh, there he is now. I should have my Polaroids on, but he's coming close to it. I'm just going to take a chance now. This might work, it might not. Oh, I've run out of... Oh, I've missed him again. I don't know whether I'll be lucky a third time. No, I've lost sight of him now. What I'm going to have to do, if I can move slowly, is get down and get my Polaroids. I should have put them on in the first place, really. It's not especially big fish, but that's not what it's all about. It's just the fun of catching them. Oh, I can see everything now. I've got these on. No, I can't see him anywhere. So what? I'm going to take a chance that he's retired into these lilies here. And I'm just going to work the lure across those lilies. All the time I'm looking around the boat. He's not going to be too far away. Can't see him, but what you've got to watch for now, they can just suddenly appear from nowhere. This is one of the problems, if you can call them problems, with surface. Oh, he's there. Surface lure fishing, you do tend to miss probably 60% of the takes. I always think if I land 1 in 3 of the takes, that's pretty good. He's certainly going to have a look at it. I'm just going to turn the handle just very slightly. If this was 5 o'clock in the morning, he would have nailed that pretty hard, but I think he's just playing with it at the moment. I'm shaking it just to give it a bit of, almost try to make it feel as though that whatever it is, he's afraid of the pike. No, he's certainly a wise young pike. I think a change of lure is probably called for. I'll put on something that's going to work under the surface. He may take it a little bit more confidently. The trouble is changing the lure when your hands are shaking, you're so excited. Look in my box of tricks. Oh, here's one that's not been out for ages. This is a little lure called a fuzzy grub. And I usually find if the pike won't take a bigger lure, a change to a little grub type lure like this often does the trick. Let's give it a try. Now I've lost sight of him. I'll just flick that round near the pads, try and bring him out. No. Oh, he's looking at it. Yes, you devil. That tempted him. Oh, lost him again. I can't believe it. I doubt whether he'll take again after that escapade. It's frustrating, but by God, it's fun. I mean, that hook is needle sharp. It's just that the pike has got such a bony jaw, it's difficult to get the hook in at times. Yeah, he's certainly got that one. I think probably the best thing to do now is just hang the lure over the boat. It may seem unbelievable, but sometimes they'll just take the lure as the boat bobs it up and down. I'll give the water time to settle, and I'll have a cup of tea. There certainly are some interesting features on this water. Basically, from what I've seen so far, it's quite a shallow water. I've not found more than 5.5 feet on the echo sounder. In fact, I've seen every inch of the bottom. But it's absolutely fascinating. It's a pleasure just to motor around looking into the water. It really is. I'm told there are some very big pike in here, certainly 20-pound fish. And this is the time of year you can see them really. In the winter they'll tuck themselves away in the deep holes, but in May they're just as likely to be out sunning themselves in the shallow water. Looks a bit deeper out towards that open water. Well, this certainly looks an interesting place to try. And get the anchor over the side. Without any hesitation, I'm going to get a lure down between those islands. Just let it settle. The conditions are changing now. All of a sudden, as I speak, the wind has started to come up. And these are more conditions to my liking now. As long as it doesn't get too fierce, just a nice ripple on the surface. That's about the speed I like to see it coming in, just making that little wake behind it. It's important to work the jitterbug at the right speed so that you get the right sound coming from it as well. When it's working right, it makes a lovely sort of plip-plop sound as it comes towards you. All the time I'm looking in the water for pike that might be following. I don't mind it landing on the water with a loud plop. I can see one coming. Yeah, there's one coming. I'm going to speed it up a bit. Oh, well, I've run out of line and he's right next to it. Oh, and he's turned away. I'm not going to move for a second. He's swimming towards that island that way. I'm going to try once more with the surface lure, then I'm going to put a little jig on. Keeping very still just to see if I can see him down there. No, I can't see him. I'm trying not to make too much movement with my hands in case he is down there. Such a choice in here, I don't know which one to pick first. Well, actually, this is quite a successful little lure. I might try this. It's a little Rapala minnow spoon. I've had no end of... Oh! This is getting exciting because the water's boiling down there. Something has just moved. These little Rapala minnow spoons are excellent. Not just for pike, but for perch, chub. No, I think it's time to move on. Okay. Well, one thing about lure fishing, if they won't take one lure, there's lots of others to try. And I've sat and thought about this, and I've suddenly remembered an old favourite of mine that's certainly worth a cast with, and it's a buzzbait. I think this one's called a heart beater. And this is, it's best to work it very fast on the surface, I find. Oh, good grief! I had a take straight away and missed it. Just shows the importance of changing the lure. Just a simple thing like a change of lure can make all the difference. It is supposed to be mainly worked on the surface, but you can actually let it sink below the surface and it'll still make the same sort of noise. What it actually is two blades rotating and catching on each other, making a clattering noise. Right, I'm going to work that one fast over the same area again. Not too fast, give him a chance to catch it. Check nothing's following. Right, I'll give that fish a chance to rest and I'll cast over this way. It's certainly proving to be a frustrating morning. Getting a lot of interest, but no fish in the boat yet. I can't imagine what the pike think this is. Perhaps I think it's just a young bird racing across the surface. Oh, these pike are really teasing me this morning. Oh, well, one last cast and then I'm going to move out into that open water. Now I think we'll try the same tactic but further out in the open water. Well, the echo sound is showing some much deeper water now. So I think I'm going to anchor on the edge of this deep water. Well, I'll have to let a bit more rope out on the anchor. That's it. It's not a great deal deeper, but it'll give the pike a lot more cover. Perhaps while the sun's up high, it might give them a bit more confidence. think I'm going to stick with this buzzer for a bit. It was quite exciting watching that last fish attack it. See if I can get one to come up out of them lily pads. No, they're not being very cooperative at the moment. Back to the jitterbug. It always pays to keep trying different lures. Eventually you'll get it right and something will work out. I'm always a little concerned when my old favourite, the jitterbug, doesn't produce a few fish. Right, I'll see if I can get it under them trees down there. Of course, it isn't always essential to cast the surface lure over weed. The pike will still come up out of deep water for them. Let's try across the open water. Very often, this sort of fishing, the problem is largely that you've not approached the fish quietly enough and they know you're there. Just checking to see if anything's following. No. Try getting down onto those trees. Oh, lovely. Just let it rest there for a bit. A lot of people have trouble using a multiplier, and I must admit I did for quite a while. But one little thing that can make all the difference, I found, is that if you don't put too much line on the reel and you don't allow the line to bed in, you don't seem to get the overruns and tangles. I mean, obviously you need sufficient line to cast and to play a big fish, but certainly... Oh, yes! Oh! Oh, yes! Oh, I've lost it. Oh, it took it again! Well, that was interesting. Oh, it's in those pads. Oh, this is going to be a problem here. Oh, I thought this might be a problem. I'm going to have to lift the anchor and go in after the fish. Just knock the check off. This is the trouble with spring piking. So much weed growth about. It's not a very big fish, and oh, it started to move anyway. Here it comes. Oh, yes. He's not too happy about this. Yeah, I'm not getting much of a fight at the moment because he's stuck in them pads. That was interesting. It took the lure, then it lost it. Well, it's not a bad fish actually. I thought it was only a teeny jack, but it's quite a respectable size. Well, the way the lure is, I daren't get it with the landing there, so I'm going to have to just try and lift it by hand. So I'm not used to this boat and I can't lean over too easily. There we go. Oh, I got one at last. Come on. Forceps at the ready. That's it. Actually, it's not a bad looking fish. Not very big, but that's not what counts. I love catching them all. Right, let's try and catch another one. In the spring they do fight pretty hard, and it's best to hang on to them until they're ready to go. There's nothing wrong with that fish. It's just gone down on the bottom to sulk. I'll drop the anchor and try again. You probably noticed the way that fish got caught in the lilies, and there really are some bad lily roots down here. Really are some bad ones. But in fact there's one there, it's as thick as my leg, the root on that lily. And it is important to have some really good line on, and this 12-pound Barkley big game, it's probably the best line I've ever found for this sort of fishing. See if we can get a repeat of the action. Even a bigger one, you never know. I think I'll change my lure. I won't use this one though, it's a devil to cast out, but how to look after your lures. Just going to try something different. There are some very big pike in here, and in the spring they're quite likely to take quite a big lure, so I'm going to try one of these big Rapala super shads. We may as well think big. Actually, people don't tend to use them because they think they're only for big fish, but in actual practice they'll take pike of any size. In fact, I was using this one in the pitch black the other night, and I had something hit it, and I would think the pike that took it was only twice the length of the lure. How can they resist that? Of course, these heavy lures, they do tend to cast very easy. I think I'm just going to have a nice, slow, leisurely retrieve on this. Just let it come up and break the surface every now and again. Ooh. Oh yeah, there's something coming after it there, quite a big, oh, it's turned away, it's quite a big fish came for it then. Just shows a change of lure, and we're back in action again. Do you know, a couple of times, I'm sure that pike nudged it a couple of times on the way back. In the spring, pike can be pretty ferocious. They'll really slam into lures at times, but there's other occasions when the takes are very gentle. And it's always best to be aware that you can get a very gentle take. Oh, Jesus Christ. That's not a bad looking pike actually. Frightened me to death. I'd like to return to this area tomorrow, perhaps early in the morning. can't expect them to feed really heavily all the time. This time of year I would expect them to feed quite heavily daybreak for a few hours, and they're probably resting around now, so we're not really after very active fish at the moment. But even so, we're managing to tempt them to move around a bit. I'm just going to keep still. Oh, oh God, it's next to me. It's a good double. Well, I've tempted it with the super shad. I'm just going to quietly get down and change the lure. I can see it lying there. On these occasions, I always think it's best to go smaller, and if anything, use something a little bit more subdued in colour. Here's an old favourite of mine, and this looks more like a live fish than a live fish itself. It's a Danish lure. It's actually made for sea trout fishing, but it's a brilliant pike lure. It's called a Jack Rapid, and I've had no end of pike on this lure. Oh yes. Oh bloody hell, little one's come in and took it. What is that? I think unfortunately with the boat going over the fish, we've probably minimised our chances of getting it. We'll have a few more minutes at it though. Yeah, that's what I've been waiting for. It's a little trick I often use. Oh God, I've got to get in control of this quick. It's a little trick I often use in these situations. All I did, I just hung a dead bait over the end of the boat about a foot under the surface, and the fish that are following the lures in see it, and very often they'll grab it, and it worked. So we'll try and keep it out of those weeds down there. Whoop, it's only a little one, but by God, it's a fighter. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Oh, try and keep it away from the anchor. Now, will it keep still? Forceps ready. Got to be careful, there's a hook flying around there. I'm not going to take any chances with that. Yeah, very tricky this, because if you're not careful you end up with the hook in your wrist. What I like to do is just hook the flying hook just in the scissors of the pike, and then when it does crash around, if you should drop it, the flying hook can't catch in your wrist. Oh, we still haven't got the big one we were after, but not a nice little one. Only 5 or 6 pounds, I suppose, but it provided me with a bit of excitement. Well, there's one down there at least 3 times this size, probably 4 times this size, so I think we'll persevere with this swim. 6 inches away. Well, that little trick has worked for me so many times, I can't believe it. All you do, you just hang a fish 2 foot under the surface and put the bait runner on and just listen for the bait runner to go. Because very often, if they're not taking the lures, they just need a little bit more time to make up their mind, and just seeing that fish hanging there, they've got time to decide whether they want it or not. Right, back to the lure rod. No. Oh, we'll have to try something else, I think. Something I've not tried yet. And again, one of my all-time favourite baits for most pike fishing situations, and that's the old spinnerbait. Very similar to the buzzer which I showed you earlier, but this one actually works under the surface. It's got the big upturn single hook and a couple of really throbbing, vibrating blades. Again, this one is made by the Hart Lure Company, American company. This one's called a Sweetheart spinnerbait. They cast really well. They're pretty well weed free, and they certainly catch a lot of pike. Oh yes, yeah. Ah, you devil. As I say, they catch a lot of pike. Pretty effective lure. Again, we picked up a little one. But I'm not complaining. Nice thing about these big single hooks is that they're a lot easier to get out. First you've got to grab hold of your pike though. And that's just nicely nicked in the end of the snout. Pops out very easy. Another lovely little pike. Well, we still haven't got the big one we're after, but let's keep trying. I think I'm going to try that tactic again. There's obviously still a few pike around, and they are pretty difficult to tempt. I mean, there's nothing to it really. All I'm doing is just impaling a small fish on a couple of size 6 partridge trebles and just literally hanging it over the boat mid-water, like so. And as the boat drifts around, it gives a bit of movement to the fish. And to make sure that the fish doesn't feel anything, I'll just put the bait runner on, like so, on this Shimano reel. And then the fish will feel no resistance as it moves off with the bait. And really that rod can fish on its own. It seems that pike do like to get underneath the boat in all sorts of different places. In fact, on one occasion, I was getting the bait off the surface that had come off and a pike took it out of my fingers. So always remember, pike do like to get underneath the boat. Right, so that dead bait's hanging there, moving around of its own accord. I'll try going with the spinnerbait. Well, there really is such a lot of lake to explore. I've really only scratched the surface so far. There's so many places I can fish. Really is one of the nicest places I've ever fished for pike. Right, that's not working. Let's try him with a bigger bait. Back to the big Rapala Super Shad. That seemed to stir them into action early on today. Such a heavy lure. On this fixed ball outfit I can cast it quite a way. Right over to those reeded margins. Well, that was on one of those big Rapala shad wraps. And it's a whacking great plug, but it's quite a little pike that's took it. Oh, he's off. Luckily I've got no anchors down, so I shouldn't have any trouble with him. Yeah, he took it the first time, it came off, and then he grabbed it again. Certainly is a very, very good lure, this. One of my favourites. Oh, yeah. So I don't rip my arms to bits. Right. The important thing when you're lifting a pike like this is to get a really good grip. Worst thing you can do is just mess about, just fiddling with them. There we are. Another one. Well, I was going to anchor up and use dead baits, but it's so exciting plug fishing, I'm going to carry on for a bit longer. I don't know where the big pike are though. Maybe we'll be lucky in a minute. What I'm actually doing at the moment is just keeping the motor on tick over and just working my way along up against the wind. We're getting close to the area where I had some quite big fish following during the middle of the day. Another tactic that you can use if you want to is just to have the motor on slow tick over like this and troll the plug behind the boat. But to be honest, I find that a little bit boring. Just standing there holding the rod, waiting for it to slam round. I'd rather cast from the boat to all the likely looking places on the bank, or near the bank, up against sunken trees and reeds. Oh, well, it can be quite frustrating and quite tiring actually, standing there lure fishing for hours on end. Especially when you've been doing it for several days, as I have. So I'm going to have a rest for a few minutes and just do a little bit of dead baiting. I know there's plenty of pike in the area and they probably will pick up the dead baits, but really I enjoy the lure fishing. But while I'm having a rest, I'll just stick a couple of smelts out. The rig's nothing fancy, it's just standard stuff really. A couple of size 6s, these are Partridge CS9s. They're a really strong hook which you need in a water like this where there's loads of lily roots. 20 pound Berkeley wire, 12 pound big game line. And I'm just going to put that out into the area where I saw that bigger pike earlier today. Just light on top of that soft silkweed. Just set the bait runner so that if I am looking away when the pike takes it, at least I'll hear the bait runner go. Now when I'm boat fishing and I'm dead baiting, I always use a round float. It's very difficult to use a stick float when you're dead baiting from a boat, because every time the boat moves it wags up and down and you think you've got to take. But with a round float, you don't always get the same sort of immediate indication as a stick float, so it is important to keep your eyes on the floats all the time. I'm using smelts because they're such a good all-round bait. Some of these are absolutely superb. Beautiful smell to them. I'm going to try fishing them quite away from the boats. It could be that I'm making a bit of a disturbance with the boat and that they are a little bit spooky today. They don't seem to be taking like they normally would. Right, I'll settle down and have a cup of tea. Incidentally, the rods I'm using are the Shimano Stradic specimen rods, 2 3/4 pound Tesco. And you need a rod of that sort of calibre for pulling the fish out of these sort of weeds and tree roots. It's no good messing around with a soft rod of a low Tesco. Right, I'll sit here in peace and quiet now for a while. Yes. Oh, it's only a little one, but oh, we found a few fish here. It's one of the reasons why you need quite a long trace when you're lure fishing. Sometimes they can twist the trace round and round the snout. Oh, we're getting plenty of small fish. There seems to be quite a few fish in this area, so I'm going to concentrate here as it gets dark now. We haven't got much light left. Well, the day's rapidly drawing to an end now. The sun's just going down behind the trees, and I've had a wonderful day's pike fishing. I'm going to make a few more casts, and I hope you've enjoyed that taste of spring pike fishing, and you've got some idea now of what sort of boat tactics to use. There's a lot more to it, obviously. Different types of waters, different conditions, you'll need to fish slightly differently, but I think you've had a good taste of what to expect. Above all, I think the excitement and the action. So now as you leave me, I shall just carry on fishing into the darkness, and I hope you've enjoyed it.